Living in Appalachia is rough. We deal with violence, gun violence, assault, sexual assault, and rape. And these are things that may be talked about within our podcast. And we just want to let you know, viewer and listener discretion is advised. We live in some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Stolen land, stolen again to create the extraction state.
We are real people talking about real things in a real way.
This is Appalachian Livin.
Welcome to episode 10 of Appalachian Livin. It's time. It's time, y'all.
Is it time?
It is time.
All right.
It's finally time.
Well, it's about time. Right?
Look,
I feel like it's about time.
it is. Because you know,
We've been raising the alarm for 2 years.
yeah.
Yeah, I really have. It's
And we moved into and we thought, what a perfect setting to talk about this issue right here in front of Indian Creek, which is sort of ground zero here for this issue. Right when we moved in here, this creek was completely dry. And yeah, we were going through a drought, right? But it had never been this dry. I mean, it was dry, powder dry. And as we found out in about a month, we figured out why. Right?
Yeah, I've lived here off and on my entire life. My father's been here for 50 years. We've had droughts, but there was always like a little pool, you know, for little fish to try to survive. It was still like wet with, you know, mud.
well, there are springs and seeps often all along creek beds that provide other sources of water than the main flow, right? So that's what keeps those aquatic creatures alive in those dry times.
So what we were experiencing was this area right here was completely dry. Like not even a little pool.
And I have evidence of this because I've done media and photography my entire life, so of course I document everything around me. So we'll throw up some pictures and some video of the dry creek bed.
Mm-hmm.
But as it was dry here, 2 miles downstream was overflowing, was just like this. And so that doesn't happen when we're in a drought. There are springs and stuff, but that it was never like that in that area. This is 2 miles from a place I grew up. My father's been for 50 years. So,
And then we learned that there was a brand new artesian well that popped up 2 miles down the road in the Christian's backyard. And it had discoloration.
smell.
When the
Can you describe an artesian well for those who don't understand that it bubbles up from the ground?
It bubbles up from the ground. And this was a place where there was no water coming previously. This was brand new.
Well, I think it was an old well, but an artesian well is one where it is just flowing. Like it's like,
Right.
you know, constantly going.
But it changed its flow and what was coming out of it.
Absolutely changed. And from what, you know, I have heard from the stories from the Christians was it started as a little hole and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you witnessed it as you drove by, the smell, the changes in that one spot over a year's time. And this was the time when we were purchasing our home to put here on this property.
And so for a little background, tell folks what happened to these wells in the late 80s.
Well, in the 80s, and as I was talking to Amanda at the meeting last night, we both had red hair growing up.
Yeah.
We had well water and our hair was red. We thought we were redheads until like we would get like a perm or something. And then I was like a sandy blonde. I'm like, what the heck? Our clothes were always dingy because it was red and iron and sulfur. I never thought it was poison. We drank it. We had to get filters at some point in the 90s. And then
and let me contextualize this
Yes,
as to why
please,
this would
please.
not raise any alarms is because I live on the other, grew up on the other side of Raleigh County where there is no mining activity. We also have high iron concentrates in our water. We had to have water filters.
It can be natural.
Absolutely. So it wouldn't, in and of itself, raise any alarms, right?
Well, I mean, we were drinking it and nobody was really getting sick.
Right. And my grandfather, I told you, would take the water in Hotchkiss and take it out of the ground and leave it open so that the sulfur and gases would off-gas from the water. And then what was left was really delicious mineral water, right? But you had to let that sulfur and those gases come out of it and work out of it, right? So we've worked around these ideas of things in our water for a very long time. However,
when... Now in Hotchkiss, that was a place that was the smelly place,
that
right?
was the sulfur smell was strong, right?
When you drove through there, you knew you were about to get hit with it, and we would roll our windows up for 15 minutes.
We'd make jokes about who farted in the car.
Right.
You know, I mean,
and that's what this smelled like, but
more
different.
acrid, right?
It smelled like that, but different. Maybe more concentrated, something else in it, but it's a different smell, and you can tell, right?
Right.
And then what happened to facilitate the Welch Public Water here in this area right here?
So now Mike Goudas told me this story, and he told me the names of who it was, but there were a couple of people that needed to get water. Well, I mean, U.S. Steel sunk the wells. Everybody's wells got sunk.
How were they sunk? From the blasting from the mountaintop removal, or
no,
was it?
It's underground mines.
This is underground mines.
Okay.
So
Subsidence.
They broke that aquifer, right? And so these wells didn't hold water anymore. And I guess, I know my father was a boss for U.S. Steel, and he always said that it was a very watery and gassy mine. And that's not the only.
There was a gas well right across the road here.
An old wet gas well, right? What they call wet gas, which is kind of the gas that's with the coal
bed methane.
Coal bed
right?
methane.
No, this wasn't.
That's different.
No, this wasn't coal bed methane. This was in the 80s. There was a gas well here, and it was natural gas.
Right.
A conventional well.
Yes, yeah.
It's a very gassy area, right? So, and he always said when he heard that they shut U.S. Steel down, and now for clarification, that's not the only underground mine here.
That's the one everybody talks about. It's the big mine. But there are plenty of other mines here. My dad worked in all kinds of different little
punch mines.
Is
what they call
Is what they called them.
And so when they broke that aquifer, everybody that lived along this road, at least on this side, had to figure something else out, because now their wells are dry. And so now, fast forward to 2022, 2023.
I think it was 2023, because it was the year that we purchased the house. Because I remember saying, as we were thinking about and looking into getting a house, this is when this thing kind of started.
Right.
We saw it on social media. Richard Altizer started ringing the alarm. More people started getting involved. And so about a year ago, I started to get involved. That's why the TikTok that I have, Appalachian Livin,
that's how it started.
That's how it started. It was my personal TikTok account, and if you go way back in my TikToks, you'll see like my cancer struggle.
Right.
You'll see, just random things. But then it turned into the Appalachian Livin, and I started trying to ring the alarm because we needed water donations.
And the media mainstream media wasn't covering it. It wasn't really providing any resources for anyone or any information
Right.
as to what was going on and how to deal with it.
And so speculation is that they, as the energy companies in this area, rediverted this water. Correct? That's what
This water in
this water
creek.
in this creek.
So the speculation is that they're taking this water. Now, this is now. We're talking about currently.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's happening now. They're taking the water from our creek, which is why it goes bone dry, and they are flushing it into the coal mines and pushing the coal bed methane up
And out, right.
and out.
And that's why you see these old wells are now artesian wells, artesian springs.
Because they're pushing all kinds of water in
There's
it.
a forced source of water that's
Yes.
not a natural source that is now being pushed through the aquifer.
And that's why our water is dry, and the same creek 2 miles down
is a normal
will be
flow.
will be just like this.
And now
Right.
they've been found out, and this now has water.
Because they're no longer diverting it entirely.
Exactly.
Right. But without oversight or any kind of intervention,
Exactly.
they were.
Right.
So that brings us to the recent meeting, the meeting that happened yesterday in Pineville. Yep. This was a community meeting that was organized and sponsored by the Blue Feather Initiative, which is really, I think, Zach Shrewsbury's doing. He's got a website, bluejrising.com.
So the Blue Feather Initiative is the, what do you call it? The
mutual aid.
The mutual aid portion of the Blue Jay Rising.
Of his campaign.
Yes.
And the very first big topic for Zach's campaign and on his website is mutual aid.
Yeah.
And what we are doing with this podcast and information about water and water resources is all community mutual aid. It's intended with that intent to provide these resources. So this is a natural alliance for folks like Zach, who is local here. And so
I have to say who Zach is.
yes,
Zach, he ran for office.
the U.S. Senate candidate against Joe Manchin.
Thank you, because I'm terrible with those things.
I wrote it down beforehand, Zach,
Thank
because we wanted
you.
to get it right and give you credit for earning 36,706 votes
Yeah.
in an election that was extremely difficult. So kudos to you, sir. And what you've taken from that and learned from that and done in your community is inspiring and admirable.
Well, let's say what he did for the community during the floods.
Go ahead.
Because we all know what happened in McDowell County and in Welch. And
Catastrophic flooding in February.
this man and his organization raised money and took U-Hauls to communities to hand out water and bleach and whatever they could get.
That's mutual aid. And that is often, in some of these instances, we heard that was the first contact that some of these folks had with anybody.
Yep.
Was Zach and the people there were.
All right. We're back. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties by, that's the hazard of recording next to the creek over here. And
I'm
using
good, but
extension
things
cords.
happen.
Things happen.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think, I don't know, we could go on and on about Zach and what he's done.
Yeah, and I think we ought to try to get him on the podcast
Absolutely.
at some
we
point.
absolutely will.
And again, I think we ought to have Richard Altizer here as well at some point. So
the purpose of this initial meeting, according to the flyer, was to see results of recent testing because there were questions about what was in the water. There had been notifications of violations that looked like chlorine had perhaps been added in ways that created other chemicals. So to see results of recent testing and what actually is going on, to hear stories and experiences like you all just shared about trying to build a place to live and dealing with this water issue in real time, and then to discuss next steps. So I just want to say that as a old school organizer, this has my heart, right? Because this is what you do. You bring people together and you learn from their experiences, you share information, and you make a plan to move forward.
And
in
it
the
was
same building too, like in the same place. And like someone had mentioned, like we need to do this like
Regularly.
once a month, because the energy that you get in this kind of situation is not something that you can replicate on social media.
right. And it was a full house.
So where was it held?
They were pulling chairs from the back.
Yeah, it was at the Castile
Event Center
Center.
on Main Street.
next to
It's
the
a
post
new event
office.
center.
Very cool.
And it's very, very nice. Owned by Jill Castile here. She's a business owner. I think they collectively paid for the space, but it's a fantastic space, meeting space. It has amenities and bathrooms and
It's a great
kitchens
resource
and
to have.
all of that. So, and it was packed. There was probably 100 people in there.
Every table was
full, and there
Or
was
had-
standing room in the
Yeah.
corners and the sides.
And you all actually were able to get some footage.
yeah,
we did.
We filmed the entire thing. It's not as professional as I would like, but
Look,
we're
I'm
just
not a
starting out.
professional, and I'm tired. And
But you have
We're not. I am a video professional, but
I am not.
This type of equipment is very expensive, and we are just starting this this journey here, and we're trying to build up a cache of gear. That way, we can do this. So we did what we could. We set up a couple of phones and our iPad, and filmed the whole thing. The audio's not great, but we're gonna show clips from that meeting. And
who was there? Like, who were
So-
some of the folks who talked?
Look, so the first guy that talked was the one that gave us this awesome water tester.
Which we're going to try out today and actually test our water
Yeah.
behind us here.
They handed out like 8 or 9 of these for free.
is that the gentleman's name here? I think we ought to mention
Nathaniel Than, I think he goes by Than Hitt, PhD,
Doctor-
senior scientist.
Dr. Hitt.
Dr. Hitt. Dr.
Very
Hitt
cool
from
guy.
WV Rivers. And WV Rivers has been very helpful. I've been in several Zooms with them. Several of the girls that came in was like, Lindsay! And I was like, yay! I love to see the people in person that I'm actually in a
There are
Zoom call
local
with.
water experts.
And
Yeah.
there were
you know?
people there's like, I was in a Zoom call with you. I was like, probably was. You probably was. And
Yeah, before we went, Lindsay's like, nobody's not going to know who I am. And I'm like, Lindsay,
Isn't that cute?
everybody knows who you are.
that's my toxic trait, is that I think that nobody knows who I am. And so when I'm in public, I'm like, they don't know me. And so I look
Yeah.
like a snob, but I'm like, y'all don't know who I am.
Yeah, so she's trying to be, just kind of walking in and not talking in there.
Although
It's Lindsay. Hi, we love the podcast, and I've been in a Zoom call with you, and you're amazing. We're so glad you're here, and
love the
it's-
shirt.
it's
Where did you
cute.
get the shirt?
So you had
It's
on one of
cute.
Larry Gibson's Keeper of the
I
Mountain
did.
shirts. Yeah. Thank you for representing, by the way, because
course.
I'm sure there are people who did recognize it from
by the
Larry's
shirt.
era.
Oh yeah, buy the shirt.
Yeah.
They noticed the shirt and was like, "Oh, did you know Larry?"
Been a
Right?
minute since we've seen that highlighter yellow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he goes, we called it the highlighter shirt, and because you could see Larry, and I said, I love these bright colored shirts, and Nikki gave me a bright orange one, and I've worn it on the podcast before. I love bright colors, especially if you're in the woods with family.
So it's interesting. She's got like this duality of trying to lay low, but being dressed like the most ostentatious color in the
That's
room.
what I said. That's what I said. I was like, Lindsay, you have purple hair. And she's like, but the last time they saw me in blue, my hair was blue then. I'm like, yeah, that's real different. And I said, you're going to have bright colors on that don't match. You're going to have like a bright yellow shirt with like bright colored socks, and they're not going to know who you are.
They didn't see my socks.
Yeah, you did cover the knee socks off.
I had black pants on.
Yeah, she
okay?
covered
I
the
was
knee socks
being
that day.
professional.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With the red bandana.
Yes, sir.
You know, the
Oh
only
yeah, I did have my
The
red
only-
bandana too.
the only real redneck in the whole place, right?
That's
you know.
right.
And I was about to take my red bandana and start swinging it around like,
Because what inspired that? What
Oh,
inspired that feeling?
okay.
Because
Well-
for a public meeting, that sounds like kind of fun.
girl, it was very.
So the DEP was there, right? Were they also there? No, the DEP
Not
was
that
not
I
there.
know of.
No,
There
not.
Okay.
was some gentleman in a suit.
But I think he was
Type.
a lawyer.
He may have been a lawyer of some sort.
So there were people that were invited that didn't show up, of course. Our local politicians.
Yeah, our politicians who
right?
was supposed to have our backs in situations like this, but they didn't want to face the music. They are cowards. You, sirs, are cowards. And I'm going to call you out right here because I'm tired of being quiet about this. Now, I have not been really involved, but I'm done with that. And if you want to bring ramifications to me, then go ahead and do it because I'm done. I'm done being nice. I'm done being just a silent voice that's trying to do things in the background. Because if you're going to completely ignore us,
Then
then
we'll make it
I'm
impossible.
gonna get louder.
Yep.
And when I get loud, it's real loud. Okay? So you people are cowards.
You think
You
I'm
were-
loud, y'all?
You were
Yeah.
you were invited to a meeting with your constituents that are being poisoned,
That's right.
and you couldn't show up.
Did they
You
send a
couldn't
representative?
You couldn't
No.
take 2 hours out of your day on a long weekend to show up and actually speak to the people that are being poisoned and don't have clean water. In Wyoming County, it is the worst water in the United States. The people from Flint, Michigan said that they had never seen anything like this.
This tops Flint, Michigan.
That it didn't even hold a candle to what they were dealing with in Flint, Michigan. And it enrages me that our elected officials did not show up. But it did not surprise me. We continue to vote for these people. And that was a lot of what this meeting was about, was acknowledging that the people that we have voted for are not in our interests.
And they're not accountable
They're not accountable.
for
No.
the actions that happen on their watch.
And that it can happen across party lines.
That's right. No party's
Yeah.
more or less culpable than the
No.
other in this situation.
Yeah.
No. Joe Manchin is as guilty as anyone in this state, and he has been a beacon of the Democratic Party for
Decades.
50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And-
the coal, we all know that
So-
the coal companies are in Joe Manchin's pocket.
Yeah,
We know that.
right.
And we all know and we all have known that the politicians are getting richer and richer off. I mean, this is not a new concept because this is something we've been saying my entire life. I don't understand.
But speaking out and directly to them in a voice as strong and as powerfully as you just did,
amazing.
we now have this platform and other platforms where citizens can take this message directly to these folks who ignore them and gaslight them. This
Well-
is decades of experience that I have personally, being told that the information that you shared with me, I never saw that. Those test results and those poison water results, we never saw that. You know,
We
this
have
is-
receipts, though.
now,
We have receipts.
Now we have receipts.
And the fact that we are in a backyard with 3 microphones and
Can reach the
two,
whole world.
2 iPhones and an iPad, you now can't shut me up.
Because we
Now,
are on a budget
you can-
and we can still do
You
this.
can have me fired. You can try to arrest me. And that's what I have feared. And I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming because we talked to a business owner that we'll talk to in a week or two. And I'm not going to tell you who he is. But that when he raised an alarm on social media, the health department showed up at his restaurant and shut it down the day it happened. And so they're going to try to use everything within their power to shut us up. Yep. It's going to happen.
And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Is because
until
they've been very successful for a very long time. Because when you shut people down and threaten their livelihoods and threaten their families and threaten the way of life, and then turn around and say, well, nobody's going to listen to you anyway because nobody's going to give you any airtime. Nobody's going to give you any radio time. Nobody's going to, print a paper. Where's it going?
Yeah.
I made my own.
Because
I have the skills here to, this is a megaphone. And now we're going to use it.
Yeah.
So other people expressed these same things last night, right?
Oh, yeah. It was inspiring.
Oh, my goodness. So the one woman that she's already been shared around social media because several people filmed it.
You said she took you to church?
She took us to church.
Yeah.
I mean, man, she said it and she ate and she left. And I was like, yes, she was my favorite, because she said everything that needs to be said.
And we can show that video. And I got the same feeling as Tom speaking just now to me that I saw in that video. And that is, we're done.
We are done.
You can't not show up anymore.
Yeah.
You can't not show up anymore.
So
you can't hide.
Let's take a little break and let's show that video.
Did you say this was on the municipal water or?
It's on the Brandon Public Service.
I agree with him. I'm the same way. I posted a picture this morning of my brown water. It's been that way for 6 years. I contacted the Water Commission. I contacted EPA. EPA actually told me that all they had to do was provide me with water. It didn't have to be clear. That's what I was told.
Did they not turn the water off today?
The water's off on Hillside, not on Riverside. Hillside's the one that's showing the most. I'm on Riverside. And we're coming from the water tank. So is Miss Shields and them. Lisa Shields is a beautician, Miss Shields' daughter. She has to send her clients home to rinse her hair. That's crazy, guys. I'm serious. It's ridiculous.
What's also ridiculous is that y'all hear this news, West Virginia Water Development Authority thought it was a good idea to send millions of dollars over to Ohio to a school.
Yep.
Hello.
We talked about it.
We got some needs here. How about this need here first? So this is, that's something we can work on.
I want Jason Mullins here today. I want us a county commission here. I want my public service, the people that we voted in, I want to know why they're not helping. Why Richard Altizer has to be the one that gives the water. I want and not worry if I'm getting sick from it. When I moved to Britain 6 years ago, I had no health conditions. I can promise you. Now, there's cardiac. They don't know if I've got cancer. I have to do biopsies on several places. I have hypothyroidism. I have gastric intestinal diseases. There's stuff going on. Yeah. Jason Mullins lies to me. Where's the $2 million that Governor Justice gave us? Come on. Where's it at? I was talking to Jason Mullins that he can't have it until Pineville upgrades. Yeah. Pineville just got $3 million. Pineville's upgrading their water. Yeah. They're upgrading Salisbury sewer line. 911 got a nice upgrade. Where's ours? Yeah. Why isn't it we, the poor people, the hillbillies? We're not dumbass hillbillies. We are freaking people that deserve water. Okay. And we need to start speaking up. Yes. We need to start speaking up. We want to stick together. I have water. Richard gave me water. There's still some water at the house. I loaded it down so much. My husband told me, don't you ever go after another. Brand new truck, literally it was on the tires. Thanks to Margaret and Richard. I called Jason that day when I posted the first picture of my water. Jason said, you better go, Richard. I'll tell you, I can tell you. I voted you in. Why do I have to call Richard Altizer? Why? How much did that nice statue cost, Pineville? Who's that statue of? Why are they not paying attention to us?
That's why,
The guy that did Flint, Michigan, he come in here.
For the president.
It was Paulino. It was last year. Said he'd never seen it this bad. Flint, Michigan, this dwarfed Flint, Michigan. He just wrote a book about it. He's coming back, but he said, this, we should be evacuated. Is what he said. And he's coming back, and you can go on his YouTube, because I'm sure y'all went on my page. It's Status Quo. He come in here, he said this just dwarfed Flint, Michigan.
I'm telling you, I moved into Britain 6 years ago. And when we bought the property off Miss Margaret, she told us then, water was horrible. My husband gave me a heads up. He was born in Elk Trace. They moved to Britain when they closed it for the dam. All his life he said the water's horrible. Just get ready for it because it's going to be horrible. 6 years now I've lived there. That's right. Not 1 month have I had water.
You pay taxes.
For 30 days.
You pay taxes, though.
And 60, for 30 days now I've not had water running to my system. I don't have water. My mom was here. My mom, when she comes from North Carolina, she brings gallons upon gallons with her. She doesn't use my water at all. My dogs will not drink the water. When I take a shower, coming from the public water system's water, it shouldn't smell like rotten eggs. I'm not done. I was raised on a well in Pineville County. God had me from it. Half of it, God had me because of our well water. God had me. But I should not have to beg and plead and ask. I said, well, John Blow off the street to get me water.
and that's why these gatherings are so important, because that energy, that voice, needs to be taken to everyone elected. Is there anyone here elected right now? Exactly. But that's why all this energy needs to be taken to those people. They understand they can't get away with this any longer. Republican, Democrat, whatever the hell they are, they're not doing anything here. It's ridiculous.
I was told by Water Commission out of Charleston that there's supposed to be a meeting every month from the Water Commission, the local Water Commission. When I asked Linda Collins, who was over it then, she acted like she didn't know what she was talking about. Now, whether she's here or not, I don't know. I don't know her. Don't care about it. Whatever. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody. However, when I asked Jason Mullins about it, what? I mean, it was completely.
Don't matter. We don't matter. We don't.
They don't care.
What it is, these big coal mines and stuff.
Exactly.
Exactly.
These coal mines are coming in here. There you go. These coal mine companies are coming in. And trust me, born and raised here, I love coal. If it wouldn't be for coal, we would not run. This country would not run. Trust me, believe me, I know that. I feel that. However, these people have to do it right and safe. We're the ones paying for their conduct. Excuse my language. We're the ones paying. People are dying. People are getting sick out of no reason. I was perfectly healthy 6 years ago. I should not be facing this. I truly believe that it's the water. I truly believe it's the water. Even cataracts. I was diagnosed on my 50th birthday that I had cataracts, and Dr. Kess said you're the youngest person I've ever diagnosed with cataracts. Cataracts! Don't follow me at night because I can't see. I'll tell you.
Well, I appreciate your voice. We got to get that voice louder, and we got to get that voice in every corner.
Okay, so now if you don't listen to that lady talk and you're not inspired, then you don't have a pulse.
You ain't from here.
You ain't from here, because we know the feeling of somebody assuming we are ignorant hillbillies.
And every time, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because every time she said that, I went straight to you saying
The myth of the inbred hillbilly.
Yeah.
And tell us about that, please.
So in short, basically this idea of the images and the concepts of malformed, birth defected individuals out of Appalachia were always kind of put in this corner and say, well, they inbreed, right? Like they're back holler people and they don't have a lot of folks around. Well, this kind of has been incorporated into our story in Appalachian, Kentucky, and West Virginia, in these backwoods places, right? So I will speak for myself. I adopted that story and thought that that's part of where I came from. And I've said before, tried to go into the world to be a better hillbilly and show them we weren't all inbred imbeciles. And then I grew up and I got some education and I got some context and I learned what coal toxins do to bodies and what chemicals out of the ground from extraction do to bodies. And if they go into your water and your air unchecked, they can really damage your offspring and your organs and for generations impact that. And what better way to marginalize a community and hide devastation from those types of things than to call them something dirty that nobody wants to look at, like inbred hillbillies. So, in my opinion, that was one of the best smoke screens of all time to make us sound ignorant and unaware and uneducated and inbred. But we've talked about the idea that if you consider all of the people who came here from all over the world to mine this coal, from all different countries, all different creeds, all different colors, it would have taken 1,000 years to inbreed to the point of that level of birth defects.
Dude, I'm a mutt. There's no way I'm inbred.
And then,
I'm a mutt.
So let's, on that subject, let's talk about our personal stories. Okay. So I think I have noticed, now this is, of course, statistically, the autism rates.
Is that recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to check for some reason that was still recording.
It looked blank, but it was.
Okay, good.
All right. So statistically, the autism rates across the country are always moving higher, correct? But it seems like to me there is a lot of kids with autism in this area, and that has kind of exploded.
We're also talking about the cancer rates too.
And I was getting to that. I was getting to that. So we have a son with autism, and he spent a few years living right here, and we bought water for him for his bottles and things, but we cooked with the tap water.
You bathe in it?
We bathed in the tap water.
Oh, wait a minute.
I don't know.
Wait a minute. My dad used to go get water in McDowell County.
From the spring.
That spring up there, yeah.
I mean, everybody said it was clean, but
you don't know
I never
that.
Trusted it, to be honest.
You don't know that. And I'm not saying, I'm not blaming this, but so far now genetics have a lot to do with it. Okay? Let's make that very, very clear. Genetics,
predisposition to any thing can be genetic. I
am diagnosed ADHD. I'm undiagnosed autism. I'm sure that I'm on the spectrum somewhere, right? But when you do have a predisposition for a certain thing, environmental things can affect that in a person. Mm-hmm. Okay?
And heavy metals in particular have a lot of impact on your organs and how your brain works, and those are the toxins we're talking about. Now we'll talk a little bit about some of the chemicals they're concerned about now, because it's conceivable to think that these companies may have tried to fix this problem through chlorination, which in fact may have caused additional problems that we're just now learning about. But the biggest problem with this type of water and pollution are heavy metal contaminants, which once they enter your body, they never leave.
Exactly.
They also go into your offspring.
Correct.
And that's what I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying.
Right.
Because I had heard something, and I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or if I just talked about it with someone else, but that these heavy metals get into your body, they stay into your body forever, like lead. Mm-hmm. Our parents were exposed to lead.
Right.
So we have generational accumulation along with other things.
And our parents collectively grew up in coal camps.
And every one of our, like a lot of the boomers, when they get older, we are now experiencing some sort of dementia.
Memory issues, right? And so the hexavalent stuff too, with the memory issues, like the Ziploc bags, they're starting to tie some of that constant plastic use. And I'm sure if a lot of the old timers
and they did that
and
too.
boomers would microwave and plastic and stuff like that.
We did too, and
But
I
we
still
did
do. And
too.
I catch myself, and I'm like, "Ooh, I shouldn't have done that."
But
Yeah.
these
Shouldn't have done that.
environmental toxins that are constant, and then your fabrics that you wear on your skin, your off-gassing of your carpets and your materials and homes and things like that. You know, we've made strides in trying to reduce overall toxins in some areas, but I've said this before publicly, any effort you make in that sense is completely overshadowed by the pollution of your local water source. It's impossible to remediate or do anything to help
Water is life.
when your water is compromised.
We all need water to live.
And
Yeah.
are you worried about the testing today that we're going to do? I mean, how do you feel about that? Both of you, are you curious?
Oh, I'm curious.
I'm curious. I'm not.
What does it test for?
So, go ahead.
Let's go over the cancer
Oh yeah,
epidemic in this county before we move on.
Well, we were talking about how we really don't have hard numbers because we don't really have a hospital in this county.
Yeah, there's no
Everybody
hospital in
goes
this county.
to
So people get referred out to
Somewhere else.
specialists in Roanoke or Charlotte.
when I went and did my
Beckley.
cancer treatments, Beckley, right?
Yeah, you go to Beckley or you go to Princeton. Some go to Bluefield over here in this area. So your rates, I don't know how those numbers are accumulated, but it seems like to me, right, as the layman, that your rates are not going to be accurate.
because of how people are treated and where they're treated.
Right.
It's harder to track.
Exactly. And so let's talk about this little piece of land right here. Okay, that we're currently on. My wife, my lovely, beautiful wife, had breast cancer
At 42.
At 42.
at 42.
Yeah.
And
I've always
your-
been a healthy woman. I don't have cancer in my family. My mother, my grandmother had uterine cancer. But she had 13 kids.
Right.
Shit.
That's like an open wound in your uterus 13 times. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen there, right?
Yeah.
And she probably had some environmental toxins as well.
And partners who weren't faithful and all kinds of other things that we don't really talk about.
Right.
That also impact
Cancer rates.
women reproductive
Well,
Exactly.
cancer
the thing
rates.
is that my grandfather died. And she had to remarry
Right? So
to a terrible, terrible man.
who
Yeah.
knows what came along with that, right?
Right. And then your cousin, who lived in
Right here.
a place that was right here where our
This
current
was her
house
backyard,
is.
actually,
This was her backyard.
through her teenage years.
And she is almost the same age as you. She's a couple years older.
She's
She
a
was
year.
in my class at
No. Well, she
Pineville
was
High
supposed
School.
to be in your class, but she was a year ahead of me. She's
Okay,
like a
she
year.
was in the middle. Okay, gotcha.
She's like a year and a half older than me.
Right. But we're all very, very close. We're all very, very close in age.
She's more or less like my sister, though,
Right.
and she was going through chemo treatment at the same time I was.
For what type of cancer?
Lymphoma. Yeah.
And you were being treated where?
I went to the cancer center in Beckley.
And did she go to the same cancer center? Okay.
Yeah. Because she lives in McDowell County, but I mean, when you live in Southern West Virginia, that's pretty much you either go there, you go to Princeton,
Right.
or Charleston.
Or Bluefield, like you said. Yeah.
And she
Bluefield
works
really
at a
doesn't-
hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
She works at the only hospital in the two counties that we are the closest to, the one that we're in and the one we could throw a rock to, right? And that's the only hospital within 30 minutes drive.
Yeah.
But she couldn't get treatment there.
No, that's
That kind of stuff doesn't.
No.
Get out of town.
You
You
can
can get
get
some emergency treatment
emergency
there, but
normal
that's it.
treatment just to patch you up and send you along is basically what you get.
But speaking of
Let's take a break.
our kid, I need to go check on him. So
Okay.
let's take a break.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Don't apologize.
No, he's really
I haven't.
putting it into context.
Yeah, I think I'm a journalist, so I'm trying to make it. Yeah.
Interesting and relevant.
Not just that. Let's talk about context and what we're facing, right? Because a lot of people don't know,
Yeah.
right.
right?
Still.
you can't start in the middle and tell a story
Right.
without telling the beginning of
The
it.
assumption.
We're still rolling. So yeah, exactly. You have to say the story over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, because people don't know about this.
No.
People don't know about this.
And it's really frustrating.
Years. In 2023 to 2025,
Yeah.
modern times, and it's like screaming into an echo chamber. It's just like,
Yeah.
And
who's
we're
listening?
getting spotty news coverage, right, from local areas.
There's one news
you know.
station. There's one journalist that has taken it on, and the I guess it's the kid that was there yesterday from WOEY.
Yeah, well, OAY and 59 will send some folks
I didn't
down.
see anybody from 59
Not
there.
at the meeting, right? Not at the meeting, but they have covered the story.
They have.
Right.
They've covered the story.
So just a thought for like future stuff too is you got it? Creating press releases around it and sending them out to the media, the earned media pieces, because then you get your message out there. And often they'll just pick it up and publish it. You know, we've had some luck with that. If it's interesting but not too wackadoo, you can usually get some press on stuff like that. But
this water situation is a very, very touchy subject.
it's not going to be covered widely in the mainstream media.
There has been so much controversy and just total bullshit and gaslighting. I mean, almost everything that this man said was like pretty much saying, okay, look, we know. Okay, let me just start with this tester, right? Because we were still rolling, but I tested the water here, and the guy said that what this is testing is, what did I say? Like
dissolved particulate.
yeah, he called it something, not contaminants, compounds. I don't know, but it's dissolved particulates. So you're going to get that naturally with certain rock formations, limestone,
Right.
and he said where he's from, and I can't remember where it was, but there's limestone or something there that causes this number to naturally be higher. But here, the normal number should be 0.3. So 0.3 or below is a good number. 0.3 or above is bad. I just tested it. It was 0.36.
So, in the grand scheme of things, not too bad in this part of the creek,
This part of the creek.
which is the part we know they draw from for the water. So, we don't expect the water to be too terribly bad here, but we're going to test it downstream
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Ricky is getting a
He's
little.
joining us in
Yeah.
the yard.
But we're going to go test a couple of other places downstream, see what they are. We're logging them on an app that they have. And so it's the big thing was, hey, you guys live here. Y'all see what's happening. Let me give you these test kits for free. You put that data into this app, and we have this data that's coming in.
Right.
And so I got one, but there were others that are downstream. So if I put mine in, it's like, hey, this is what it is here. 2 miles downstream, it's going to be sky high.
Mm-hmm.
Something's up.
Right.
You know, it's a data point. Hey.
All right, it's really great to be with y'all. My name is Fan Hitt. Full name is Nathaniel, nickname is Fan. I want to do a couple things with y'all today. Give you a little background from where I'm coming from. Give you some tools that you can use. And then we're going to start a conversation about where we go from here. But let me just start by saying, I'm with the West Virginia Rivers Coalition. I'm the senior scientist there. And I'm an expert in water quality. I'm an expert in fisheries biology. But you all are the experts in the room. You know your experience. You know your home. You know the creek behind your house. You know the well water quality. You know what you've been dealing with. And I'm just not an expert in that. So I'm really impressed by y'all being here. And also just very grateful that you are here. And we'll see what we can do together. You know how you have a plan, and then like the plan is one thing, and the reality is another thing. All right, well I had some slides. We're not going to show slides, but I am going to do it the old school way. I want to show you some pictures. So my colleague Mariah Clay, who do you all know Mariah? Yeah. Fantastic. I'll see. I enlist some help here, showing a couple of pictures, and we're just going to walk them around. Not quite yet, but we're just walk them around because there are three things that I wanted to do today with a little bit of time with y'all. First is to give a little context. A little zoom out. Y'all know what you've been dealing with here, but I just want to present a little context from the state and the nation. And then I wanted to step into kind of a field guide for pollution. What are you seeing? What does it mean? And, where can we be really confident about what it means? And where do we honestly have some other questions? Okay, so the second thing is a field guide for pollution in your streams and rivers and in your water. And the third thing is to give you some tools and resources that you can use. Now, on that third piece, don't worry about taking notes. Don't worry about scribbling down anything. I'm going to give you a menu of options. A menu of things that you can use. Hopefully it'll be relevant, but don't worry about it right now. We're going to pass around a sign-up sheet. We're going to follow up with you. If you want to have those resources, sign up. We're going to walk around with this thing, and we'll follow up with you, okay? Resources online, water testing resources, and then monitoring resources. And that third one is a real big one, because just to kind of get to the point, we have some equipment that y'all, if you're interested in testing water in the creek or river behind your place, or you see water coming up and you're curious about it, we have some things that you could use. And I want to set you up for that. But what will happen is after I finish my little rant here, we start a discussion. If you're interested in doing that work, we're going to meet over here and we're going to set you up with some gear. It's free. Just borrow it. No problem. I'll give you the training and you'll be good to go. And it'll be something that you can use, and I'm going to explain why it's important. And it's easy. And it means something, okay? So that's what we're going to do. First thing, Wyoming County in context. All right, so, I got to say, I grew up in Morgantown. My dad's from Mercer County, Bluefield. My granddad worked, for Peabody Coal for a spell. And I have nothing but respect for mine workers. Mine owners may be a different story. But mine workers, I have a huge amount of respect for. And that's where I start. It's a love for the land and respect for working people. Now, I have run around West Virginia. For 20 years, I worked with the U.S. Geological Survey as a hydrologist and stream biologist. I was based in the Kearneysville lab, U.S. Geological Survey. So 20 years I was doing that work. I worked in Mud River, got Lower Guyandotte, and I saw some things that were really pretty scary business. We saw animals in the streams that were deformed. We saw poisoning due to selenium contamination and other things. And, if that's happening to the fish in the streams, what's happening to the people on the lands? And so I'm really glad to be able to turn to this challenge and to hopefully provide something that's going to be relevant for y'all. But it motivates me to be here right now. Now, one of the things that we did with USGS was we looked at this question of, okay, what do the streams tell us about public health, and particularly about human cancer mortality rates. Human cancer mortality rates, and lo and behold, we see that this neck of the woods is struggling, and you all know this, but it's a story that we have to tell so we can get the resources Zach was talking about, we get the attention down here and the accountability that we were talking about. But I'm just saying this because I saw it with my own eyes. as a scientist. I saw this with my own eyes, and it was damn scary, okay? It's a crisis. Now, a paper was published in the Science Journal just a couple of months ago, and it's not going to be news to you, y'all, but it was news to the nation. The punchline from this research that was done across the entire county data across the entire nation, found that the most water quality violations in the United States of America was right here in Wyoming County. And that's a shame. That's a shame. And that is an important thing to understand. That's an important thing to understand, but that's only the starting point, right? It's not enough to say it's bad. It's like, what do we do about it? But it is a starting point. That was work done by a researcher in Oregon State who didn't know anything, honestly, about Wyoming County. But it's something that we can use to motivate resources, to motivate work here. That was basically a result from, the water quality violations in Pineville's municipal water. And I will be the first one to say, water plant managers are public servants. Huge respect for water quality management, but they need help, right? So, not to throw them under the bus, the real challenge here is, and this is where I want to work with you all, it's not where we're monitoring stuff right now. The municipal water, there's 3,000 people about on Pineville's municipal water. That's important. But there are many more people on private well water. Just a show of hands here, who's on private well water in your property? Okay, that's the majority of folks, okay? And so this is a little bit scary because if the streams are polluted, if the groundwater is polluted, well, we're all drinking from that cup, okay? So that's the context. That's why we're here for motivation. Now let's go into a field guide for pollution, all right? And one of the tools I'm gonna give y'all, and hopefully you guys can use and run with it. It's a simple app called the West Virginia Stream Watch app. Just fire it up on your phone, snap a photo, and it goes to my desk. We can tell you kind of what's going on there. We can start documenting this stuff and holding the officials accountable for this. But there's a lot that you can learn in a photo, right? They always say, a picture tells 1,000 words. Well, we got some pictures. Let's start with the first one. This is the first thing you'll need to look at. And this is the kind of the basic stuff we all did when we were kids, like running around the creek. What is the color of that water? Okay, just start with that, color of the water. And actually there are a couple that we'll want to show if you could zoom on. The first thing is obvious, brown colored water, right? That can be natural. And when it rains, that's soil, that's not a big deal. If you see chocolate milk, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So you could maybe do a little roaming if you wouldn't mind. This is gonna be old school. Back when I was a kid, we used to take our PowerPoint old school. But also know that, brown water necessarily isn't bad either. Anybody been up to Dolly Sides? Tea-colored water is also natural too. So, if it's chocolate milk, that's soil runoff, not necessarily toxic, but land disturbance makes it worse. If it's tea-colored water, that's often totally natural, not a problem. Places up at Dolly Sides. So the brown color is not to be worried about. White coloration, when you see white-colored or milky-colored water, and anybody in this room seen that in the stream around here? Right. So that can be natural if you're up in, say, Glacier National Park, where there's a glacier and it's white hill, natural glacial runoff. It's not happening here. So if you see white colored water, or sometimes bluish tinted water, milky colored, that's never natural. That's a sign of pollution, and that's an obvious sign. It's also, by the way, that photo kind of shows you what you're looking at. It's also, by the way, a violation of state water quality standards, right? Yep. Can we enforce that? That's another question. But that's a violation of state water quality standards that should prohibit that kind of visible discoloration of water. So the whites and the blue, the bluish tint, red flag there, big problem. Another thing that you'll see is that you can have what's called precipitates. These are the materials that covers rocks, okay? And this can come in different flavors too, right? Next slide over. So, again, you might see white colored precipitates on there, right? It kind of, you pick up a rock and the top has white on it and the bottom is natural, okay? Well, that's usually aluminum. Not always, but it's usually aluminum, and that's a sign of mine. Usually it's a sign of acid mine drainage. Aluminum, a metal. It's good for tinfoil, not good for your body, okay? So that's a big problem. And the other thing out here that you'll see that is really scary in a way, it's a white precipitate, but stringy. It's a bacterial mass. Has anybody seen that, like white, stringy, white bacteria stuff? Shannon Branch shows that down at Cable's, other places, we see that. And guess what? When you see that material, you often get near it and you'll smell it. You'll smell that rotten egg smell. That's hydrogen sulfide gas. And what you're looking at there, it's not aluminum on the rock so much as it is bacterial mats that are consuming sulfur. They're consuming sulfur that comes out of, pyrite or mine discharge water. That bacteria is eating that stuff and sending it up into the atmosphere. Hydrogen sulfide gas. Rotten egg smell. You smell that rotten egg smell, you see that wavy white stuff? That's another sign of typically mine discharge water. Now, important point. That's not the same thing as sewage discharge, right? Sewage discharge is loaded with bacteria. Sewage discharge often has solids and other nasty stuff in it. That's not the same. That's not the same thing. You won't really see that sulfur-eating bacteria, that white stringy stuff, in the presence of sewage, classic sewage discharge. That's a problem too. We know it, but that's not what's going to cause this particular problem. So sulfur is the key, right? Sulfur is the key. Now, also it's important to note that hydrogen sulfide gas you're smelling is toxic at high concentrations. So if this thing is coming up under the foundation of your house, which unfortunately we do know that to be the case, that is a problem. You shouldn't be breathing it at high concentrations. It's a public health hazard just by air quality, okay? So what do we got? Just to review. We got watercolor. That's the first thing. Then you got precipitates over the rocks. That's the other thing. Where you got wavy kind of bacterial mats. These are the things to look for. So if we were going to do a field guide to messed up creeks, those would be the top of the list. Okay? And y'all have seen that. The other big one I'm sure y'all have seen, yellow boy or iron oxide, iron precipitate. This is the classic acid mine drainage. We've all seen this. Now, I got to say, it's important to note that in some places, this can be just the way the rivers work. It can be natural. And it's just important to recognize that. Up in like Otter Creek Wilderness, occasionally you will see a little seep or just a very gradual, when groundwater comes up into the stream, the pH shifts because the carbon dioxide shifts. And what that does is it drops out stuff that's being pushed out through the groundwater. And sometimes that naturally has a little iron. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is where the material is thick, yellow, sludgy orange coloration. That is a signal of, it's a classic signal of acid mine drainage. And it's interesting that in some places you're going to see one flavor of this pollution, and other places you're going to see another flavor of it. So it's real important to document, where do you see this stuff? Where do you see this stuff? So this is where y'all come in. We need to know where this is. If we're going to actually put the pieces together and hold those who are responsible for cleaning these streams, hold them to account, we have to do the basic science. And I can't do it, y'all can do it. That's the exciting part, and we want to give you the tools to do that. All right, let's see, what else we got? Oh yeah, and by the way, you can't blame rhododendron for acid mine drainage. I mean, it's like you have to actually say that. That blows my mind. But we all know these things, okay? Oh boy. All right. And one other thing I want to say in this field guide to pollution, Field guide to pollution. This is another category. And this is the surface films and foams. And just like the other stuff I'm talking about, you all seen this. We see like eddies in a stream, and you look, when the water's slack, you see buildup of surface films and foams. Well, again, some level of that is natural, all right? Some level of it is totally fine. It's dissolved organic carbon. It's fine. It's supposed to be there. But that's not what we're talking about here. A little bubbly surface, we expect that. But we don't expect to see handfuls of foam looking like somebody's, washing machine just, busted. You send out a huge plume of that. And unfortunately, you all have seen this. Who here in this room has seen this in Indian Creek, in Pineville, and other places? Anybody seen this stuff? Foam? Okay. Now, what is that stuff? Now, there is ongoing work to answer that question, right? It could be a whole bunch of things. Matt with Appalachian Voices is looking at this, and other people are looking at this. That's a huge need right now because it could be a very toxic slough, okay? It could be a toxic slough, and unfortunately, the powers that be don't want us to know what they're putting in the ground because they don't want us to know when it comes up and affects our water quality that they're accountable for. It's up to us to figure this out, unfortunately. It's up to us. But kind of it's always been up to us, right? I mean, neighbors take care of neighbors. Neighbors take care of neighbors. And that's how it's always been, you all know that. But we're challenged by it. So we need more tools and resources. So this is the third part, and then I'll quit my rant here. The tools and resources part. So would you mind handing around that sign-up sheet? And also, well, let's see this one for last. What we're going to do here is just, if you want to get these, I'm just going to hit you with a couple of big topics, and then a follow-up. This is where the work's going to be. After this meeting, the follow-up stuff. If you want to follow up, just sign there, and we will circle back to you to give you these resources. There's some stuff that's online. Any internet sleuths can use some of these. Some people are really into that. Not everybody, but some people really are. And there are some important websites, one of which still exists by the US EPA. It's called ECHO, E-C-H-O, ECHO. I can walk you through how to use that to look at point source discharges, where there are violations, and what's in that stuff. If you can do that. Another one is West Virginia DEP website, their water quality website. They have information, and that's particularly interesting when inspectors or others come out to a site and you want to say, well, this is the DEP's observation, right? That takes a little bit more sleuthing, but if you're up for it, I'll point you to that, and I can help you interpret that data set too. So those are two websites I'm gonna give you. A third is from the Environmental Working Group, and this is a really cool national organization. They track water quality issues across the country, and they give you some summary information. So, for example, Pineville Municipal Water, and again, not going to throw the municipal water plant managers under the bus. They're public servants, and good on them, but they need help, support, right? Because a lot of the contaminants in Pineville Municipal Water are what are called chlorine disinfectant byproducts, and they're nasty, right? But it's not their fault. They have to use that because that treats the bacteria, but it's not good to drain. It's the byproducts of that stuff aren't great. They're bad. They're actually toxic at certain levels for people. So that's bad. But the point is that the Environmental Working Group website, I can give you that too. Again, not worried about writing this down. I promise to follow up with all the information. Okay, so that's the stuff online. But here's the real fun stuff, I think. This is the stuff where tools that you can put in your pocket and you carry around with you. And look, this is the West Virginia Stream Watch app. You'll find it on the West Virginia Rivers website. And again, I'm going to send this all to you. It's real simple. It's basically when you see something, say something. It's an app you put on your phone, take a photo, and you hit go. It sends that image to my desk. I evaluate it. We look, see if we can explain what's going on there. We let you know, and then we follow up with DEP. We follow up with the powers that be, and we advocate for clean water, and we advocate for inspectors, and we don't let go. it's something that I think you can use. Think of it as sort of the Swiss Army knife for stream monitoring. Swiss Army, it does a little bit of anything. Now, pictures are powerful, and I'll tell you from experience that when DEP inspectors come to a site, what motivates them is a photo, right? It just gets them, I mean, not always, but I'll tell you, it gets their attention, and that's what we got to do. So this is a tool you can use. Again, it's free. I can set you up for it. All you need is a smartphone. You don't have to be online to use it. It's real nimble, and it's something that we think has a lot of power. Okay? So that's the second tool. And the third is, this is also, I love this because this is like the data side, but there's this thing called conductivity, right? It's conductivity is the number one thing you need to measure in your streams and rivers. Because what this does, basically what it means is how much dissolved material is there in water, okay? That's what conductivity means. And it's a measure of how fast electricity goes through. It's just about dissolved material. But I'll tell you, anything over 300 units, we know that's pollution in Appalachia, in this part of Appalachia. It's real easy to do. It's real easy to interpret. It has meaning. And by the way, West Virginia Rivers and other partners have pushed this issue, and we have seen court settlement agreements, consent decrees to get cleanups in place in the lower Guyana. So I'm telling you, it's meaningful, not only from like a cool science perspective, but it's really meaningful from a fix the water perspective. And the beauty is I've got something like 8 or 9 of these gauges here that are available for you to use for free. I can give you a quick train up, no problem. I'll just need to get your name and contact information. So that's something you can use. And I'll just end by this. If you're real fired up to do stream monitoring that you think you've got a place that you visit every day, the creek behind your house, you want to do more, there are more things that you can do, okay? There are more things that you can do, but I'll just keep it simple. It starts with conductivity, okay? A gauge, dip it in the stream. Is it above 300? Is it below? You write that number down, take a photo of that gauge, send that photo to me, we report it, and then we come back here and report out what you see and what your neighbors see. Another really powerful thing is that water, as it comes down to a tributary, does that conductivity value change? That tells you a lot, right? Does it get salty, basically? Is there material? My discharge water is almost always way above 300 units. You can see 1,000, 1,500, we've seen that around here. It doesn't tell you what contaminants are in the water, but it does tell you the water's contaminated, okay? And we can get cleanups started with that information, with you on the ground. So that's my story. And once again, I'm just going to have to. We want to open up for a discussion here and thoughts about where to go from here. There's a lot on the table. There's a lot we could do, but there are some simple things. And I'll tell you honest truth. It starts with you being here right now. I have total respect for that. I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here. And I want to thank you for your time and attention. Cool.
So we tested that 3.6.
So you have a bit of a
0.36
comparison for where this is happening.
And so I think it was really good for them to do that. One, we're going to get those data points. And he said these kinds of testings is how we are able to get action.
Right,
how we're able to get people to come and clean up.
Right.
Exactly. It's data, it's evidence, it's something's up. Y'all can't hide from this, And then the people coming together was very powerful. And I have to mention the fact that because we all know, not everybody that sees us will know, but everybody around here knows that I've had my beef with some of the people there, right?
And by beef, you mean just different tactics in how you organize and miscommunication around certain events.
And that's really what it is. And we believe differently.
Right. But you've never really been an organized unit.
No.
And it sounds like this meeting kind of set you all on that track.
I think it's Zach bringing people together because me and Richard, it felt like we buried the hatchet publicly almost,
Right.
because he was like, he pointed me out and was like, you and I, we're like oil and water. And I was like, I know, and I stood up and I said, look, my name's Lindsay Reiser. Some of y'all know me. Some of y'all don't even like me. It's fine. But the one thing that we do care about, and the one thing that we believe in, is that we should be guaranteed free, clean water.
Yeah.
We deserve clean water. We deserve a clean land to be able to grow our own food and,
And different generations and different paradigms and different backgrounds and different filters have different ideas on how to accomplish that. And that causes friction in movements. And not everybody's built for the long haul when you start getting a community together, right? Zach's a great example of someone who's kind of built for understanding the long game. Mm-hmm. And the long game is always be present in the community with the mutual aid resources ready. Because you're always going to be the one right there when shit goes down. Mm-hmm. You've got what you need, where you need it, to at least put a patch on the wound until things can get better. And we know this. We've had to do it for ourselves for so many years. What to do beyond that? There's always disagreement. Mm-hmm. There are people who are so ingrained in the political, you have to contact your legislator, right? And here, that's generally a waste of time, right?
Someone's mentioned that
right.
in the meeting, was like, you call these numbers, you get nothing. You get nothing.
So we need different narratives. We need different directions. And you can never, ever go wrong with mutual aid in your community. Because what you do is you learn that the person 2 or 3 doors down is actually a retired biochemist who has an amazing amount of knowledge about chemical compounds and how they, dissolve in water. So the resources that exist here in these communities are so thick and so strong and so real. And we have not been able to do a good job of bringing them together and cataloging them and maximizing them, because we're all in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
Between the economy and our environment and our own personal health and our mental health and our everything and our families and our addictions and all of these things that complicate our lives as human beings, while clean water is the most important thing, the way to get it and to ensure it is the hardest path possible of all of our choices of shit to work on, right? Mm-hmm. So by building power within your community and by bringing people who don't always get along, and God bless you both for saying it out loud, because let's start owning this, right? We don't have to be best friends to work together and to understand something. Have you been besties with every person you've ever worked with in your life? Hell no, right?
No.
But you still show up, you clock in, you do the work, and you get the job done.
Exactly.
And so you two are setting a great example of like, look, we can own that we're not all fuzzy, warm and fuzzy friends, right? But we care deeply. We have different skill sets. And I appreciate that so much, because as an organizer, it's often you tell people that you're like, not everybody agrees, right? But to understand that friction isn't the death kill for your movement, right?
Yeah.
That friction isn't the end. That friction is where genius happens, right? Like that's where creativity happens, is part of your idea and part of my idea come together. Mm-hmm. So my gratitude for the work being done in this community on this issue right now is so profound, because it reflects work done by folks like Maria and Larry and Junior, who couldn't be there last night. He was sick. He was ill. And
I wore his shirt hoping that I would
that you
see
would connect there.
That he would be like, who are you? Do you remember me?
So the work that you all are doing now is validating all the work that those folks have done for years. And so building on it, using their knowledge, using their understanding of don't waste your time writing to your legislator. You're actually better off going into your community and connecting your neighbors with mutual aid within your community. And from those interactions come your future legislators.
And that's what we were also talking about, was that we need to completely clean house.
From the city to the county
From the bottom
to the
top.
state. Absolutely. And only and simply because, regardless of who, the job isn't being done.
It's not.
When you sign up to run for an elected office, you're signing up for the responsibility of getting a job done. If you don't get the job done and done well, you lose your job.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the elected cycle, is we don't have to keep anybody that's not doing their job. That's really easy to say. It's incredibly difficult to do for a number of reasons. But I hope that this podcast and our conversation set an example for folks to understand that nothing's the same anymore.
No.
It doesn't have to look the same. Politics does not have to look the same. As a matter of fact, it's killing us. So let's change it.
Yeah.
The gratitude, the appreciation I have for this group of people and kind of fighting through those tough spots and saying, let's do this again.
Yeah.
To the person who said we should be doing this more frequently, they felt inspired and hungry. And I know there are other people there who feel that same way. That's where you were a year and a half ago when you and I connected.
Yes.
Like you were like, where do I go and who do I talk
What
to?
am I doing?
And now you have an international podcast with people listening to what's happening.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. But I touched on Richard, but I also have to mention Jamie and Tina Christian because we had some issues as well. They both come up and hugged me. Tina was like, why can't y'all get along? I was like, look, someone says something, I'm going to say something back. You know, like, that's just who we are.
And if you can accept that about me, we can get along great.
Well, I think he said, I'm sorry, I'm an asshole. I said, honey, we're all assholes. We are all assholes, especially when we're being poisoned. We're pissed off.
My inner asshole's turned on.
We are already spun up, you know. We're all
and frustrated.
You're spun
up
we
and
have
frustrated.
all
right?
of these emotions going, and someone has something to say that maybe rubs you the wrong way, and you're like, "Fuck you," you know. But at the same time,
it's an honest
you're like,
response. It's a real response.
Damn, you know, we're on the same side.
And for generations in this state, we've struggled to say that out loud. You know, we've struggled to stand up in a meeting and be like, look, I don't really like this person, but we got to work together and we got to figure this out. That's such an honest and raw place that we haven't seen in these places before.
It's a tough conversation that people do not like to have.
But is it really that tough in the grand scheme of things?
It's not.
And why are we so afraid to have it, right?
And easier.
Right? Like, this psychology of what the industry has created in these areas and how we are trained to interact with each other around these topics. I would love to have a psychiatric evaluation of, we know Stockholm Syndrome, we know gaslighting, like we know these terms, but there is a deeper psychological thing here that's like an indoctrination of how to be hands off
it's
with something
rooted
that's
into our generations.
It's mind-boggling. It
Right?
really is. And y'all are breaking these patterns, and you all are doing your best. You are not the first community to do this.
No.
You are probably not going to be successful in every way that you think.
No.
You're going to be wildly successful in ways you never imagined. But it's not going to be an easy path. And that's where Maria and Junior and all of the people who have done this work before in Printer and in, I'm trying to think, Twilight, you know, all these places in West Virginia that have been just devastated. And you do have pockets documented, cancer pockets and, you know, brain tumors in kids because, Minden. These communities who have dealt with this have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and there are ways. West Virginia Rivers Coalition is a great way to connect with those other communities because they've been at those meetings and stuff too. And you're in line and in alignment with a lot of these water groups that are working on
I've been in a lot of
this.
Zoom calls trying to get water to these people.
But the fatigue is real. And
well, it happens, and everybody has a moment where they have to step back. And I mean, you do that with everything. and I think this probably is where I can put this in here, is because I watch my girl Amber, and she's the one that helped me get any sort of following on TikTok in regards to this.
Mm-hmm.
She has family from here, I think actually Slab Fork, maybe. And Amber, you can correct me on this. But she has a pretty decent following on TikTok. Berserk, Barista. She's amazing. But I saw a video of hers today where someone was like, I guess responding to a video where she was telling people, look, life is hard right now, but we're going to be okay. Right? A simple, hey, we're going to be okay. And someone is like, that is so off brand for you. Like, you know, some people are just not going to make it out of this, you know? And for you to be like, it's going to be okay is just tone deaf or some bullshit. I don't know exactly what it said. Something like along those lines. And Amber was like, look, you got to take a step back sometimes. You have to, even if you're like, rah, rah, you know, fighting for something that you believe in, like, you can't be like that all the time. It wears you out.
It will literally kill you.
It will.
I actually encourage people to look into the history of activism in this state and some really amazing activists who died doing this work. Yeah, one in particular that stands out, Laura. I don't remember her last name. I want to say Freeman, but I've heard her story through Janet Keating, who is the executive director for OVEC for many years. And Laura came into Larry's life about the time I left, and became his right-hand organizer. And she was young and vibrant, and I want to say she was probably 10 or 12 years older than me, and put her heart and soul into supporting him and his work. And then when she was about to go on sabbatical, there was an award ceremony, and on her way up to accept the award, she dropped dead.
What happened?
I don't know all the details, but I was told this story in a women's circle, in a women's activist circle in this state, as a reminder to take care of yourself.
Absolutely take care of yourself.
Don't put your whole life
I'll
force.
be the first one to tell you that you need to go get your screenings.
That's right.
As a breast cancer survivor, you need to absolutely go get your screenings.
You need to take your vitamins, and you need to pay attention to what you put into your body.
Eat your protein.
I am a big fan now of the, what do you call them? Collagen peptides, right? Like at my age,
about that.
Yeah, it's like grease for your joints, right? When you get to a certain age, you hurt regularly.
Girl, you ain't gonna tell me nothing about hurting.
But learning what helps your body naturally. Oh, my sister has this great ginger tea that she's cooking up for me now, that like she sends me a little bottle, and I put 4 tablespoons into hot water and squeeze a lemon. It's like energizing tea, right? I don't do this. I've never done this before. But somebody I love who is a nurse who cares deeply about me has given me this resource. So I'm ingesting it, and it makes me feel really good.
And if you're in your 40s and you're not lifting, weights,
get you some muscle mass going.
You are losing muscle every day of your life.
Yes. And bone density.
And it will and bone density, and it will affect you later in life. You won't be able to pick up a 10-pound bag of sugar or flour,
or a case of water,
or your grandchildren.
Right. So take care of yourselves.
So, yeah.
And put your heart and soul into what you do, because what you showed us here at the beginning of this, yes, that's more of that heart.
That's what we felt last night.
That's what we need to see. We need to see 100 people with that same energy, one right after another, constantly. Do that, but also when you need to step back, and don't judge others when they step back. I'm really glad when Lindsay pulled me out of my shell after 7 years of hiding and not wanting to be a part of anything, because it was really easy and convenient not to worry about shit.
It's easy to just hide,
but it's okay to take time.
Yeah.
And it's okay to step back and say, you saw me do it after our April trip. People tried to get a hold of me for a couple weeks after that trip in April, and I was MIA. I was in the woods hunting mushrooms, but I didn't want to talk. And it was kind of freaking people out, because up until that point, they'd heard me a lot, and I was joining all the calls, but I needed to do that work and step back and let it cook itself.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. And you showed up. Thank you for showing up as kind of a surrogate in my place, but you were interested enough to see what the follow-up would be, so you showed up. Instead of
at
me.
The call.
You represented West Virginia.
Of course. Kimmy gives me a Zoomie. I'm going to do Kimmy's Zoomie.
So I really appreciate that, and I haven't told you that, but thank you for kind of like filling that space for me because
Yeah.
I wasn't able.
Well, being a voice against a insurmountable mountain
Behemoth, right.
of all of this power and money,
It's exhausting.
it is exhausting. It's mentally taxing,
And it's life
and
force.
It's physically
it really,
taxing.
You're expanding your
yeah.
life force on it.
You're giving of yourself so much, because if you don't put your whole heart, your mind, and your body out there, it will be ignored.
That's right. And I think that's
So-
a really good point is when we talk about AstroTurf versus grassroots, right? That's the difference is you can sit there and play on your keyboard all day long and forward memes and think you're doing something. Or you can be out there hauling water to communities, handing out shovels and hose and paper towels and Clorox, asking people if they need help mucking out their basement because nobody else has been there to help the elderly person who needs help. You put your body, your heart, your mind, your soul into it, or you can play around with it. One will get results.
Right.
One won't, but one is extremely taxing. And the
Right.
and the monetary resources, let's talk about the money that folks like Zach put in their gas tank and in their, to be away from their homes and places to do this.
In the video, he says,
It's expensive.
he says, you want to know how much money we have in our account? Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, and they put, I think, $2,000
$2,000 on water testing just this week.
for
Yeah.
this meeting.
Because, I think Richard said he told him he needed this many. He was like, I need this many. He's like, well, how much? Okay.
Right.
And so, I think they're
And then-
waiting on the results.
And
I
then
don't
even the time and effort that it takes to tell these stories
know. Oh, my
on
goodness.
this podcast,
Yes. Hours and hours a week.
hours and hours.
And
we
again-
have to organize. Elise has to drive.
An hour and a
Then
half I come
I have
down.
to set everything up, and I get help. I'm not complaining. And
We
I
all
make,
try.
and we all put forth a gargantuan effort.
And I say that I show up and talk, and you all do the editing and the posting and all of that stuff, and I
Yeah.
feel like I contribute the bare minimum
No,
because
you
you
don't.
work so hard on
You're-
all the other pieces.
You're already driving here, right? And then you bring a facet that we don't have, right?
And the energy, too.
And a lot of energy and knowledge and experience,
Good.
right?
I'm glad
And
it's
that's
worth
what we need. And some brains, right? You're
I'm a good strategist.
You're a
I like to
smart
play
lady.
chess.
So yeah,
you put
exactly.
my ramblings into.
Well,
And
because
so yeah, there's
so much. I mean, there really is so much, and there are so many moving pieces that we've kind of pulled down
Right.
a couple that we can handle. And I really hope that the folks that were at this meeting in Pineville that made the time and the effort and spoke and stood up no matter how long or just showing up, if you have any interest of all, if talking into a microphone with a couple people is easier than in a room full of people and you felt like you had something to say that you weren't comfortable, please come and share it with us. And we're happy to see that I am happy to see that folks in that room recognized you and the podcast, because this is their podcast too. This is Appalachian Livin. This is what it's, who and what. It's not just
all of us.
Yeah, it's everybody. So,
All of us that are from here that are dealing with these same things.
and the collective stories and what we've seen from hits online and the videos that take off is it's people's stories and their personal experiences here that resonate largely.
And their raw emotions.
And if we needed it to continue to get this out, we need to continue to build that, and we need folks to participate in that.
We're working on one. Hopefully next week we'll be doing a business owner.
A follow up to this meeting.
right.
Yep.
Well, he wanted to say, he was like, I have a whole lot to say. I said, I
He
have
had
a platform.
he had the back and forth, the back and front of a whole piece of paper.
just written out. He's
And
like,
he's
I
like,
got
I
so
had a lot
much.
to say, but I didn't want to dominate this this meeting.
Well, small business owners who show up at community meetings need a platform and they need a voice, because those are the folks out there supporting us and keeping us going, you know.
And he was
at every meeting.
They tried to silence him.
Yeah.
Because he raised an alarm about where the money went that was allocated to
flood
fix
relief.
some of these problems.
For the water.
in
Wyoming County. Not just
There
the flood
was
relief.
there
Because
was
this
money
has been
there.
an ongoing
Well, they've been
issue.
telling us there's millions of dollars,
There was
and then all
$2
of a
million.
sudden it got whitewashed out of the budget.
They said there was $2 million allocated in the state government to help us. And then it got shrunk down to 100,000.
And did it
And
get
then
shifted to future flood stuff
And
instead
then
of current?
then they erased that.
No, they said that the bottom line never changed, but the $100,000 for Wyoming County left. And he was like, "Where'd the money go?" And they're like, "We don't know."
And wasn't there a state official that stepped down? Did he step down?
I'm not exactly sure what's happening. I'm not exactly sure what's happening with that. Sorry.
So we'll figure that out with
I'm tilting.
maybe Zach.
I'm about.
Don't roll off into the
This is
creek.
nothing but sand here, so I'm
Yeah.
kind of just.
So
falling.
quick check on your list, because you did such a good job of putting your list together.
Thank
I want
you.
to make sure we follow up on anything else you want to
The
hit.
only thing that I didn't touch on was the one, and it's in the video. That, speaking of small business owners, there's a beautician in, I think, Brenton, and she has to tell her clients to go home and rinse their hair.
Wow.
I mean, if that's not hurting a small business, I don't know what is.
So I'd love to have a podcast, and these business owners, I think, are the place to have it. Is how does the state support small business? Because we get a lot of money from the federal government to pump into small businesses and women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And I know when I register and create an LLC, I have to say if I'm any of those things with our Secretary of State. What support, tangible support, meaningful support do our businesses get? Because if they're being also poisoned and contaminated, there's no way you can offset that with a tax break or a tax incentive if you're poisoning clients in your business.
Yeah.
Restaurants.
How many clients have stopped coming to her shop because they have to go home to rinse?
Right. And how awful for a business owner who knows that's not proper. She knows that's not right. She's
So
not.
what else is she gonna be able- what else can she do?
unable to
Yeah.
provide the service within her community that her community needs.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And the ladies or the people that go to her shop are people in the community that can't rinse their hair in their own water
Right.
either.
That's great.
There you go.
So we just don't deserve beauty shops, I guess. We just can't have.
You got to go to town, honey.
You got to go to Beckley to get your hair washed, apparently, and do it safely. I'd rather not.
That's where all the doctors are.
Yeah. You know, and that's the only thing
This is the sacrifice zone. You all have to remember this, that they have earmarked this county as we can die. It doesn't matter.
Nobody's making the
We
effort.
don't matter.
Yeah.
And it makes me mad as hell. I mean, honestly.
I know I'm smiling, but I'm glad to hear you say that.
I know. Listen, and it's the same trap that we have been caught in all of our lives. We are not allowed to talk about this. We're not allowed to be angry about it. We're not allowed to say these things in public because the rest of us have been programmed to nip it in the bud, because we don't want that talk around here.
No. They'll try to get you fired.
They will.
They'll try to get you fired. And everybody's afraid of losing their jobs, and that's why a lot of people don't speak out.
You know.
And it's
if you
bullshit,
ain't-
in my opinion, because that is not a free country.
And listen, we were listening to some Tyler Childers on the way back from the water company store, the water meeting down here, the meeting down here in Pineville, and
The long vowels.
There's a song called "Coal" by Tyler Childers, and there's a line in there that brings tears to my eyes, because he says, if you ain't mining for the company, boy, there ain't much in this town. And it's by design.
Yep.
It is by design.
It is by design. We have been bought and paid for and wrote off.
You have not told your story. I don't think. He hasn't told his story on this podcast about...
I want to hear it. I don't know that today is the day to do it because of timing, because it's almost 2.
All right. Yeah, we can wrap it up.
It's 1. What was I seeing a minute ago?
Well, we've been here a couple hours.
We've been here a couple hours, so...
Yeah.
So we can wrap it up.
I just wanted you to tell the story
I wanna
about
hear it
what
too.
you heard in that meeting with the politicians and the solar and the
Okay.
coal.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of different stories, and
We'll
one
do
I may not. And I can tell this real quick.
Okay.
Let's tell it real quick.
Do it.
Okay. I've been in the production business for a long time, right? And every once in a while you get asked to do a private event. And I can talk about this because I didn't sign any kind of
non-disclosure.
Non-disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Esquire.
I do know the legal words.
That's what we need around here.
That's why you're my friend.
Well, that's just part of the long
she knows
list of reasons.
I've already told her many other reasons.
And so this was right at the tail end of the Obama administration, I do believe.
It had to have been 2016, 2017.
Okay, so but those
The policies from the Obama administration were in effect and
Yes.
actually benefiting communities.
Right.
Beginning to benefit communities.
Now,
Right.
The administrations then undo all the things that are starting to help
Right.
to get in. Yeah.
And now why they didn't have this congressional hearing in Washington, I don't understand. But
well, anytime
they had it at Chief Logan State Park.
So when you say a private event, that's interesting because their sunshine law says that anytime 2 or 3 public officials get together, they have to announce it essentially, right?
Maybe they did. There was nobody else there.
Right.
So I worked for a local production company, and we set up 3 cameras and did a live stream to the Capitol that was shown in the halls of Congress or the Senate. I don't know which, but it was our state representatives on the national level at that time. And it was all about the war on coal and how it negatively impacted the people of West Virginia.
So in other words, the policies that were moving us toward green energy initiatives and away
Yes.
from extractive industries, they termed the war on coal.
Yes.
When in fact it was a broadening of the economic spectrum.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And it was a setup. Let's call it what it was. They had one representative from a solar energy company who wanted to do business in this area, wanted to build a solar panel factory and start churning out these solar panels. And I'm not sure which one asked the question, "Sir, what do people that work in this company at maybe your factory, what do they start out as? What's their hourly wage?" And he said $15 an hour, which in 2016,
Solid.
that was a
Solid pay.
solid opening wage with a company. And in fact, I was sitting there live streaming this event, getting paid $15 an hour.
So it's not an unreasonable
I was being
amount.
paid
Right.
$15 an hour.
Would you have considered that good pay at that time?
I thought I was doing all right.
I think you were doing all right 10 years ago locally.
10 years ago. And, you know, I could have used $10 more.
You were worth every bit of it.
I was.
However,
And I asked.
our market isn't
So shortly
built
after
way.
that, right, for more money. But at that time, I was making $15 an hour. And I think it was our state congressman at the time said, that's not good enough for West Virginians.
End of conversation.
As Tom sitting back there making that much.
And I sat there slack-jawed. Just,
Who said? Right.
and I'm looking around, and you know, to the guys that I'm there working with who are making probably less than I was, because I was running the show. I was directing the show, and I don't know what they make. I never asked, but it was something similar, right?
Yeah.
Now, the owner of the company might have been making slightly above that for the event overall, with, you know, overhead. Sure, he deserves that. But the people who were there live streaming their event were making that much.
That's not enough for West Virginia.
But that's not good enough for West Virginians. But that's an opening wage.
But
That's
they
an
wouldn't. But they
opening
wouldn't
wage.
raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
No.
Interesting.
You know,
What a
If-
paradox, right?
if
And
that's
then
not good enough for
that's
West
when-
Virginians,
Then why isn't our minimum wage higher?
Right.
That's when I realized that this was a setup.
Yep.
That it's all smoke and mirrors. That
Yeah.
we
It's
had
all
this
bullshit.
thing, and yeah.
This whole thing is bullshit, because they could have let this company come into this area, but they did not want it here.
Well, the people that were paying them didn't want
Didn't
it here.
want them here,
So they
because
had to
they could-
say,
they
no,
could
we
make-
don't want you here. It's not good enough.
They could make a decent wage and not have to go underground. Now, is there environmental issues with building
Any
solar
mass production,
panels?
there's going to be environmental
Absolutely.
issues.
Right?
Any mass production of any type of battery or anything is going to be issues.
But
However,
you can't be an industry that is not environmentally friendly and then bitch about someone
Shut
not
down
being
every-
environmentally friendly. Like that, I call bullshit. You
Right.
know, that's not a valid argument, sir.
And that is taking the choice away from someone and telling them, you know, if you ain't mining for the company, boy,
ain't no place for you here.
there ain't much in this town. And it enraged me. And I've thought about that interaction since 2016.
That's almost 10 years.
yeah.
And then knowing what's happened in the meantime, understanding what's continued, what still isn't here.
Right.
Now we have this conversation about tariffs, right? We're trying to make all this stuff here, or trying to talk about bringing all this production back.
They don't want it here.
They don't want it here.
Well,
so who
And then we've
gets-
got to pay high tariffs on coal. Is that bringing coal back?
Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like pulling the curtain back on those moments where there's this big production and this is what you're seeing, and the press release says this is what happened, or the headline even misleads you, because sometimes your headline is very different than what the story is.
Yeah. He was brought there to
As a
be
shame.
made example of.
To
And
be
that was
made
just a
example.
small portion of the interaction between these national level leaders that we have propped up.
And to be clear, that's the position that Zach was running for in the last election, was that congressman's position. So we have an example of someone who is so far removed from the community that they would actually take action against their best interest. versus someone who is such a member of the community that their campaign is based around mutual aid within their community.
Yeah.
We are literally that far apart.
And he can't
in
get elected.
the same party
Right.
Yeah.
in this state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me repeat
Exactly.
that. Opposite ends of the spectrum
Right.
of working for your community within the same party. So party doesn't mean anything here. It never really has.
No.
It's been manipulated and twisted and corrupted in a way that when you have people who get elected as one party and turn around and flip to another and get elected a second time under that party, then that's a huge indicator that folks are confused. So this is what we function within and under, and it makes it extremely difficult to do anything in the political realm. So
There was a long conversation about how anybody that even goes up to Charleston can't get anything done because they are stifled when they speak out.
And they wear them out.
yes,
They wear them out.
one person even went up in a really tough district as a Democrat and got up there and was manipulated into switching parties in a supermajority where there are 3 Democrats. You don't even need him. You don't even need him to make a majority happen. You just want to do it because you can.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to flip somebody because you can. And unfortunately, that gentleman went that way. And I believe that's an indefensible. When you rely on your community to put you in a position and then you turn your back on those people,
It's a turncoat.
that, in my opinion, is inexcusable. You've lost all credibility at any point. And I, may talk about that one day on the podcast. There's no real mystery if you go digging around as to who that was. But I'm sensitive to it because I did chair a third party in this state. I really saw the issues. And when I was approached by the Mountain Party to chair the Mountain Party, and I did my research and realized there wasn't really much I could do to damage it. I was like, well,
All I can do is up from
all
here.
I can do is try to do my best. But when I got into that organization, I recognized that, again, within the same organization, you have the polarization of the people who are there for all the right reasons and the people who are there for themselves. And this exists everywhere. So I'm saying this as a message to the rest of the country, more or less, that when you sit in judgment on us and you tell us that we choose to vote for the people who are running our lives, you are sadly mistaken. Because not only does a small fraction of our state vote, and only a bare majority of that very small fraction control what happens here, our legislators are not honest with us. They do not tell the truth. They do not hold each other and themselves accountable for the actions once they get into office. And then they tell the rest of the world that we made that decision for ourselves, and therefore we deserve the contamination and the pollution and the disease and the death. That's what's really happening in Appalachia.
And then they stifle anybody that wants to run against these people that are in power as well. And
I can talk a lot about the Mountain
There's-
Party and the third party effort and putting
There's
a
big
candidate on the bill for governor every governor's election in order to keep your party status, and having to find somebody who's willing to do that from the grassroots level. Like,
because they're coming after you.
it's so complex. They're gonna kill you. They're gonna not.
Yeah.
They might physically kill
With
you, but
all the money in the world. They beat Ojeda. Listen, let's not
that's a great
let's
example.
Let's not gloss over that. They attacked Richard Ojeda because he wouldn't shut up.
Veteran.
And now he
Honored.
doesn't even live in this state
Yeah.
because he can't stand to. They pushed him out of this state.
It's a raw, bare knuckle fight in this state. And if you listen to our podcast and you've heard our earlier episodes, you understand that this is our history. It is what we've been doing for 100 plus years here.
And it hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. They've stifled us and held the communication and the what we're doing here down as much as they can. We're done. We've said this a couple times. I've said it a couple times. We're done. We have a platform. We have a community. We have a voice. If we are not holding our elected officials accountable and they're not holding themselves accountable, then what good are they? What point is there to even have them there? You know, when you talk about dismantling systems, that one ain't working.
No.
It ain't worked
Obviously,
for a long time.
And look,
they took care of themselves in McDowell County.
I would love to dig deeper into, and maybe when we have Zach on and we go into mutual aid efforts, really unpacking the resources and the intense amount of personal effort that went into McDowell County
lot.
taking care of themselves, because it was a couple dozen people
Yeah.
with resources.
I think we need to get Brad Davis on here too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've
Absolutely.
been trying to get Brad, and it didn't work out. We need to Brad and Zach.
Yes.
And
So,
And
all
just
of
by
them.
and just by the way, if we get fired, if we get arrested, know that we know it's probably coming,
And it's going to be for
and
some
maybe
bullshit thing.
and it probably will not be true.
Right. All
Okay.
kinds of smear things come out, and,
Yeah.
and people are trying. But
You know.
I am hopeful that the truth is truth, and we're in a precarious time in this country where you've always heard that expression, use it or lose it. You use your rights or you don't. This
Right.
is us holding our constitutional First Amendment rights and using them with our full chests.
Yeah.
Because we can.
Because if we don't,
Because
we're not going to be able to. Exactly. We have to survive.
And
this is a survival.
I don't
And I
want
wanna
to.
give-
I have to.
And I want to give kudos to my lovely wife, who this podcast was her brainchild, and
No, I don't know.
Yes.
without you being the spark plug behind the whole thing,
Jumping up and down, beating on the
wouldn't,
walls.
we went and did a little TikTok down here at Ground Zero, and that was you.
Yeah.
It's
And
got what,
that's
80,000 views?
This is where this started, and
It was.
you didn't make me, but you said you're gonna help me, right?
Well,
Because I
look,
need help.
I'm not
and I was
a
like,
video
okay.
person.
I was like, all right, I'll help you.
And then she circled
And-
around to me and said, "You're
Uh-huh.
going
Like, girl,
what you gonna
She has roped us both in, and we're here.
Lily, we're
calling out to the next
Yeah.
round of folks." So
I think that's a good place to end.
I do too.
And I thank you guys for sticking with me and all my crazy.
Oh.
And when I am jumping up and down and being crazy, and then when I'm crying and being crazy, thank you, because I love you guys so much.
You know I love you.
And your intention is right. Your intention is right. Your intention is to help your community.
You know what keeps
and-
me going?
What's that?
'Cause I'm right.
Because you're right. God bless Larry Gibson.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
And if you
Perfect note
coming
to
after
end
me,
on.
you better plant your feet.
Plant
Plant your feet.
Thank
All
y'all.
right. We'll see y'all next time.
Take care. Appalachian Livin is sponsored in part by Wade Law Firm PLLC, Sage Stitch Finance Corporation, representing wisdom and mending what we already have, providing gap funds for resilient renovations.
Appalachian Livin is also brought to you by Hope Money Coaching, rescuing you from financial chaos and leading you to a path of financial wellness. Minimalist Gym, helping men and women navigate their health and fitness without restrictive fad diets.